to begin. So you are both ready to do so, to carry on from where we've been. This to say to everyone who's joining us from the various places, which are probably more geographically dispersed than usual. Welcome to this program, which we at Elliott Bay Book Company, which is a bookstore in Seattle. It's on Duwamish tribal land in the city of Seattle in the northwestern part of the United States. But and these references are really good to make today because we know people are here from various parts of the world, but particularly in the country of Kenya, where in the city of Mombasa, the author Khadija Abdalla Bajaber is about to read from and talk about her extraordinary debut novel, The House of Rust. And she'll be doing so with our guest from Nairobi, Mshai Mwangola, who I'll say a little more about in just a moment, but this is the first time they've met. So these two have already, in the little kind of preliminaries we do to make sure everyone's microphones and all that work, they've already gotten going. This is gonna be a dynamic and wonderful conversation that I think will carry on after this program is over, in time and in ways. But we, again, to say we're so excited about this book, The House of Rust, which was published in the US by Graywolf Press, which is a press we've known since their beginnings. In the 1970s, they originally started in our part of the United States, and then they moved to the central part of the US in Minnesota, and they've established and really built themselves into probably the preeminent literary independent publisher in the US. And their work, they do work with writers from all over the world. And Khadija's novel is the first in a new series that's a pre-publication prize for African writing. And they have the writer Igoni Barrett, who's from Nigeria, is the judge for these books. And there'll be, Khadija's was the first selection of this. And I know I just got an early copy of the Egyptian writer Noor Naga's new book, which will be the second one coming here in the US. But we'll say a little less about the US and more about this extraordinary book and its place in its setting, which is in Kenya and in the ocean, Indian Ocean, off the coast of Kenya, as it's a story. I'm going to say very little bit because you're going to hear much more, of a young girl whose father is a fisherman who is lost at sea. And there are other people who are very strong in this girl's life, a grandmother in particular. There's also characters who are not human who are strong in her life, in particular, a singular cat who embark on this girl's quest to find her father. And it's a story, it's a quest that's vividly written and beautifully and imaginatively told in the writing of this book. And we were talking a little, because I was asking, Khadija has also written poetry, but none have seen book form, but her devotion and interest in reading poetry and writing it shows in this novel, the beautiful writing within it. So she will be reading and talking about this book, and in doing so, we're honored really to have Mshai Mwangola with us. She is a very distinguished and renowned professor and sort of scholar in the area of orature and performance studies. She's done this work in Kenya. She's based in Nairobi. She's the founder and managing partner and director of the Orature Collective, and has been doing work with other organizations, the African Leadership Center and others. And it's work that really derives from what my understanding is of storytelling out of family and community traditions, and in various forms, oral, but also we were talking about some how things that work on fabric and clothing, the various sort of interactive ways of stories being told, and vividly so. So I think this conversation will be vivid, and we hope you'll join it by putting questions in the chat that Mshai will work into the conversation, and I will shortly disappear and come back at the end. But Karen, meanwhile, has been putting information on Khadija's book, which has been selling very well in Seattle and I think around the country in the US as it's been going. But I think part of today's conversation will also be about this book's place in Kenya and East Africa. We were talking about the launch of the book in Mombasa, which is a sister city of Seattle, where Khadija is, and you know, the part relative of Mombasa and Nairobi and elsewhere, what happens with writers, what happens with books and publishing, and how these things happen and work. So that will, I think, be part of what you get to hear about today. And we're excited about this. I'm now going to get out of the way and turn this over to these two remarkable women. And so with that, please join in giving good virtual attention and applause to Khadija Abdalla Bajaber, to the House of Rust, and to Mshai Mwangola. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Rick, and thank you, Karen. This is such a pleasure to be sitting in Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya, the ancestral home of the Maasai people, and be speaking to my sister, Khadija, whose book, oh my goodness, you have taken me on the most amazing journey. I literally did not want to end. And, you know, we're going to get into all about the book, get a taste of the book and the culture and its home, where it sprang from. But Khadija, can I just say, first of all, thank you so much. And Karibu, welcome to the conversation.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, Daktari, for coming to talk to me. I'm so honored. I know you've done a lot for performing, and to watch you perform has been a joy. And I'm so glad that you've taken the time to come and talk to me. And thank you, Elliott Bay, for organizing everything. So yeah, it's nice to be talking to a fellow Kenyan. and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I'm just so proud of you, Khadija. I've been following, I mean, I knew about you when you won the prize, and we're going to get into the book in a moment, but I just wanted to check in with you. What was it like? I know, you know, like everybody gets excited, like somebody, one of our own, and even I'm sure for your family, for your friends who maybe didn't know you were writing the book, from what I've heard, that it was not really something you were advertising, and then you win the prize. What has the journey been like ever since winning the prize till now when we've launched the book?
It's been an amazing journey, and it's a big blessing to me. But I was very stunned, and I was stunned for a long time. And it was interesting to move from writing privately, and then now your work is going to be read by people other than yourself. So it led me to kind of have to change my kind of perspective on my work and kind of consider more things. And yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm learning on the go, learning everything about editing, about PR, about what goes into making a book go out there and making it succeed, inshallah. So yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of journey. It's nothing I ever prepared myself for in life. I never expected that I would get to the point where I actually publish, you know, get a book published. Yeah, it's been good to me. Visiting me, yeah. Oh yeah, you have it there. But yeah, I'm still kind of like processing it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And now it's here, it's been launched, you're getting such amazing reviews. And I just wonder if you could just write, before we get into the book, just give us a little bit of a reading, just a bit of a taste of what it's like. And then we can now start to talk about, before we, you know, like really go into it. And before we do that, do you want to just give us a bit of what the storyline is about first? Or would you want to do the reading and then tell us, okay, this is what this is, where this is going?
I think, yeah, I would love to do a bit of both.
Okay.
Sorry, let me actually, I know you're in Kenya, so you understand the internet issues. Let me just connect to my hotspot real quick. Sorry.
Yeah,
that is fine. A interruption. Let me just connect to my hotspot so internet doesn't die on me.
And that's absolutely fine. I mean, when you're doing it, if you haven't seen this book, so this is the front cover, this is the back cover. And if you joined us a little bit early, there's this little cat. This is what we were talking about, because the book is amazing. It's about this little girl, and she's got, well, not so little girl, but she just goes on this amazing journey with these amazing, I mean, it's a cast that I had to stop back and think, okay, I don't even know what to do with all of these because I want to know each of their stories. And then you somehow bring them so beautifully together. So yeah, tell us, take it away.
Thank you so much. I kind of disappeared for a moment. I don't know if that happened on your end too, because I was switching internet. But all right, I'd be honored to do a reading for you. All right, let me start at the beginning. I think I'll read a bit of chapter 1, just like one piece of chapter 1 to keep it short. Okay, Bismillah. Chapter 1. When Aisha was younger, her father used to take her out to sea. Her mother had been beset with pains and Aisha suspected, rather sick with the sight of her. So her father, bereft of sons, would heave Aisha up onto his shoulders and leap onto the boat. Pay attention, he said, guiding her hands into the stomach of a red-edged changu, feathered filaments torn, raggedly inflating within blood-speckled gills. Ali, laughing a bright summer laugh, crooking his finger in the tuck, hooking from the inside, his little finger gleaming and wriggling like a worm. He had looked into her face, and what he saw there stopped his smile, his mirth fading. She would remember this ever after, sensing that she had failed not just at a task, but at possessing some important instinct, that she had both disappointed her father and yet done no more than expected the first time. It was not unforgivable. There were lessons here. Ali snatched the struggling fish up by the tail and motioned to the sea with it bristling in his fist. The command need not be spoken this time, but she heard it all the same. Pay attention, Aisha. He flung the mutilated thing over the side, and just as the cold cord of its guts began to cloud the water pink, a black fin cleaved the wave, quick as a scythe, and vanished. A light white froth, milky as boiling rice, bubbled up in a fizz before it too dissolved. Pay attention, Aisha. Everyone must have their share. Aisha guessed the fish her father brings, scales glittering under the saw of the old blade. The dull side scrapes the sharp slant angle towards her body. They fly off the fish, these scales, like sparks off a whetstone. They stick to the dark skin of her arms, glitter hotly on her neck and cheek. She makes the cleanest line, carving tail to jaw, pulling out guts with quick tugs and rinsing out the hollow in murky water. By the end of it, the fish are clean and Aisha is not. The cat in the alley curls its tail around the leg of a chair, but scrambles away when it is approached. Aisha pauses and puts out the chipped plate in the shadow of the flat. Days and days she would watch as a child, waiting for the cat to approach. But never comes when it is washed. Aisha had learned how to leave. In the morning, the plate is clean, a lumpy swathe of ants scattered around the rim, collecting. In the morning, she sees that the offering has been accepted. I think, should I stop there? Or chapter 1 is quite long.
We could stop there and then we can come back because I think that's such a wonderful way to start. And your offering too was accepted. I know you've just done a book launch in Mombasa and you offered something and it was accepted. Tell us about the book launch. What was that like?
Oh, I'm so glad. The book launch was organized by Jahazi Press and it took place at Alliance Francaise, who offered up the space to us. And it was organized by Ahmed Aidarus and Abdul Rahman Dego. We don't have a lot of people show up to literary events or events in general in Mombasa. So it was really unexpected and kind of heartwarming to see how many people did show up. You know, people I knew, family, people who were close to me, people I'd never met at all, other writers in Coast, people from Nairobi. Yeah, I was really, really nervous the whole day about going. I don't think I ate anything the whole day because I thought that I was going to throw up. And I told them I don't want anyone to come. But then I did see them and somehow most of my nerves left. So it was really nice to feel that kind of support, especially in some places important to me as my hometown. Yeah, it felt not like a coming home, but I felt the book was where it belonged. So it was a great honor. I felt very honored and to see everyone there. So yeah, thank you everyone.
And indeed, you you describe yourself as a Mombasarian, which I found really interesting. And the book itself is dedicated, and when you say for Mombasa, I thought you were trying to kill me. It's been a privilege. And I wonder if I may ask you to do this. There's a wonderful, beautiful paragraph in the acknowledgements when you speak to Mombasa and you speak of Mombasa. So I want to ask you to do two things. One, because I think it captures something of the relationship that not only you have with Mombasa, but also that Aisha has with Mombasa, who is our lead character. And we'll talk a little bit more about Aisha in a second. But I wonder if you could speak about this specificity. Mombasa being Kenya's quote unquote second city, being our biggest port, but also being this ancient city that for centuries and centuries has been a liminal seaport that has welcomed, many diasporas. Its culture is so rich. And yet there's something about the way you write about it, about your, okay, Mombasa, I love you, but that Mombasa becomes a character. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that. And this is why, for me, I think it was so wonderful that you said Mombasa embraced it. Mombasa accepted this story, this offering.
Yeah, I was so glad. Yeah, I wrote that paragraph because, like you said, Mombasa is a place of great culture and historical relevance. And growing up, I never quite realized that. I never thought of my hometown in the greater scope of things. And the things that I heard being talked about Mombasa were always kind of either derogatory, dismissive, indifferent, almost kind of like a belittling gaze. So it's when I got older and I was able to kind of look at my identity, not my identity, my identity as a Kenyan and my identity as a person who comes from coast. I was able to kind of like really appreciate and try and kind of notice the value that maybe other people don't really see embraced as much, because Mombasa is known primarily as a holiday place, as a place for people to unwind and kind of get away from real life and the drag of real life. But also hear people calling people from Mombasa lazy or unintelligent, when one of the reasons that that kind of, first of all, it's hot. Mombasa people work really hard to continue their businesses in this crazy heat. And they're really, really hardworking. But it's convenient to a certain kind of narrative for Mombasa people to be seen as slow or dim-witted. I also thought, what was I saying? I also know that there's not a lot of funding that goes into programs that are in coast. There's not a lot of attention from the government. Sorry, not to get political, but I don't feel like that kind of like dedication, that kind of investment has been paid back to the people of Mombasa. So people are working with really very little resources and still making a life. And I always thought that a person's value is not in how intelligent they seem or how intelligent you think they are. And there's beauty in the everyday things. Mombasa people are really amazing storytellers. And that has nothing to do with whether you got like a high school education or you're in university, you're getting a master's or a PhD. You could even not even know how to read. Sorry, double negatives. You could even not know how to read. But the way they speak is witty. It's beautiful. There's story, there's culture, there's manners and courtesies. Very rich culture. And I wanted that to be kind of respected and to be kind of celebrated. Because you have this idea like, oh, let's go to Mombasa. People in Mombasa are so welcoming, right? They're going to make us all this food. Yeah. And I thought, yeah, that's good. But you need to understand that welcoming nature is informed by a very deep sense of like, of the moral values there, of the culture there. You know, it's a shame to us if you come to our house and we don't offer you something to eat, you know? So I wanted that to be kind of the control or the kind of like the power relationship there to kind of be looked at more, it's not like Mombasa people being servile or servants or slaves to this idea of hospitality. It's that they're offering it because that is where their honor kind of is, and the things that they value that are important are there. So yeah, so Mombasa was really tough for me growing up, and that's why I said, Mombasa, I thought you were trying to kill me. It has been a privilege because I learned a lot, and I was able to finally, accept my hometown and love it the way that I wanted to love it all this time. Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things that is so rich is that you capture that. You take us, we don't see the tourists. We really get to encounter not just one character, but we get to encounter so many characters of Mombasa. And you get to see, like you talk about this thing of the courtesies, the things that sometimes, people are like, oh, that's so much. Why do they bother? It takes so long, it does all that. And even as the key character, your protagonist, Aisha, is struggling with some of these things. And it's the layers that as we go through the book, she's learning the importance of them, and we're learning alongside with her. But even as you're doing that, one of the things that I love is that you bring the smells of Mombasa. I don't think I'll ever drive past Makupa Causeway again and not think about that. The taste of Mombasa, this book makes you hungry. Like at one point, I just began listing the foods that, you put them, it's the songs, it's the everything that you bring together. And in a way, it is a girl who is on the same journey of discovering her hometown that she, so many of the characters in the book want to get away. They need to get away. But it's almost as if Mombasa itself is saying, before I release you, you've got to understand me, and you've got to understand the gifts that I have with you. And one of the things I absolutely love is that you towards the end, you call to mind Mombasa's rich history as a home of warriors. And you do that very subtly. And you don't go into any length of it, but you make us understand that there is this rich history. And so I wondered if you wanted to say a little bit more about that, but then I do want you to talk about Aisha's relationship, our protagonist, her story, what this is about, her own relationship with this hometown.
Thank you so much. You've actually put it so excellently, everything that you've said. And thank you for the high compliment and praise that it is. I really appreciate it. You mentioned something I actually forgot to talk about Mombasa being a character. And that was important to me, about Mombasa being a character. And even the sea even being a character. And Mombasa kind of releasing you once you have learned everything that you need to know. So and I call back to the history about Mombasa as a place of hiding. Zamani, the Kiswahili name used to be, what was the Kiswahili name? Vita, yes. Or the island of war. Mm-hmm. And these are things that I didn't know. The only things I knew, like when I read about history of Mombasa, was about the slave trade, which of course you're supposed to know about that, but never as Mombasa as a place of resistance, a place of learning, a place of commerce, not commerce just, they sell a lot of stuff, but like a strong, like merchant center. So learning all of these things, I was like, I have to write about it. I have to at least like sprinkle it somewhere, because I can't go on like people go on with my life pretending that Mombasa is a place of like submission and like witless peacefulness, which it isn't. It's not, Mombasa is not toothless. It may appear that it has been defanged, but the teeth are still there. So that's why you have also all these scary things in Mombasa, because I wanted to kind of go into the scariness of it, the sweetness and the bitterness. So yeah. As for Aisha, what is your question about Aisha? If you don't mind repeating it to me, Doctor.
Tell us a bit more about Aisha. So we have a protagonist who's a young woman, and this is something else, because at some point Aisha herself is thinking about these stories about, girls out there who are brave and strong and, they are go-getters and everything. And she says, that's not who I am, but yet she's in the middle of this thing where she's needing to find herself. So could you tell us just a little bit without, don't spoil the story, but about your protagonist.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'd love to. If I go in too long about it, feel free to interrupt and bring me back onto the main road. But that specific passage, I remember growing up, I'd read all these fairy tales or hear about them, you know, from different cultures, but predominantly like, you know, European, like Rapunzel, Beauty and the Beast and everything. And all the heroines in that were brave, but they were also beautiful. And they were also like, you know, heroic. And I didn't see people from my culture, people from here in those stories. I never grew up like with anyone talking about like, okay, how does Sleeping Beauty negotiate not Sleeping Beauty, how does Snow White like think about like how it is to be a woman in her society, or how it is to like, you know, do the things that she needs to do. So yeah, I never saw myself in stories, so I wanted the protagonist to kind of be reflected in that, because she doesn't have the bravery and the purity, I guess, of the heroes that we kind of broadly refer to in normal fairy tales, who are almost rendered faceless by their virtues. So all those virtues that they possess, she does not. She's too messy, she's too incomplete, she's not perfectly faceless, I suppose. So it's something that she bemoans there, because she doesn't think that she's cut out for that kind of, you know, that kind of mercy and benevolence, not only in the story, but from the audience listening to the story, you know. But yeah, I really wanted to write about a female figure who doesn't quite fit the ideas of femininity in society, who doesn't, who is not quite enough all the time, or who is kind of emotionally more complicated, and who is having difficulties expressing perhaps affection. Because I would read a lot of stories where like a woman falls into love, like she's falling like to gravity, or like, you know, a woman is able to like accept that kind of love and accept like her position in giving love in society. And I really wanted to write a story about a character who isn't like that. Yeah. And
In
yeah,
some ways,
I did.
you're reversing those cliches.
Yeah, I hope so. It wasn't really deliberate. Like when I was writing, I told you when I started writing the book, I was just, you know, I was just doing things, literally not even thinking about the story outside of writing it. I'd only allow myself to think about the story when I was in front of the page and actually writing it. That way it would just kind of flow. Because if I thought about it before I was writing it, I wouldn't end up writing it. So a lot of the writing that I did there was not really deliberate. It was just kind of, I suppose, instinctual. And yeah, so that's what happened. I kind of wanted a female character who isn't quite the kind of female character that you're usually used to, or that you usually see. Yeah.
And yet, you know, one thing I find so interesting, and I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about if you see yourself writing within any artistic tradition. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. As I was reading this book, it seemed to me to be almost the classic ogre story, you know, from the traditional narratives. And I could see these tropes of, in a lot of these ogre stories, they're stories about an encounter with an ogre, a monster, or sometimes monsters. And it's usually either a young girl or a young boy, and who's using the knowledge that's been instilled with them from older people, and very much about what is, you know, things like the courtesies, the things that you do, even when it's, you know, somebody else might say that seems illogical, but they hold you together and become instinctual. So it seems to me that you're saying that, okay, I was just writing, and it seems that the same thing that happened to your character, who had been imbued with all these stories from her grandmother and all these traditions, and ends up using that knowledge in her own quest. It seems in a way that's what happened to you, that without thinking about it, this seems to be some of the things that are coming in conversation with some of the global tropes around fairy tales and all that. So that's, I find what you're saying very interesting. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to if you were writing to a genre or within an artistic tradition.
That's a good question. I wouldn't say within a specific like a genre in regards to like an artistic tradition in terms of like style or voice, but I did borrow the format. The whole reason I wrote the fairy tale, because I've said this before, because it's a 3-act structure, you know, it's very straightforward. Talking animal, adventure, go home, ma salama, khalas. So that's how the story started and how I meant it to end, and that's not where we went in the end. So yeah, I wouldn't say like in terms of like stylistically or like, you know, voice wise inspired by any particular fairy tales, but I approached it in that kind of almost very rational, very logical way. I was like this A, B, C, the end. So that's what I wanted. That's why I did the fairy tale, because I do love like fairy tale elements. I do like any story that kind of plays with the idea of what is possible or plausible, and yet the story is still plausible. What is possible, but the story is still plausible. It's still, you, after you read the book, you walk around and you think, oh, this could possibly happen. It doesn't have to be a wizarding school or fairies taking you away or whatever it is. Just a little magic. There's the tiny little details that you encounter in your life, and kind of just polishing them up to kind of be special. That's the kind of thing that I am attracted to, I think.
And what happens in the story, as you say, it starts out as a fairy tale, and then it also takes a life of its own. And I think one thing I loved about it is just when you think the story has ended, it gets a second, you know, it takes on a twist that doesn't feel extra. Like it doesn't feel, oh, they needed the book to be longer. I loved the fact that there is more unpacking. There's more, you know, usually we do the fairy tale and we say, and they lived happily ever after, and you can close the book and move on. And here it gets to an end, and then it's like, no, but there's more. And even at the end of the story, I'm like, I want a sequel because the book is so exciting. So let's talk about again something else. I was intrigued. You've got such amazing characters. And when we talk about Mombasa citizens, you engage with the human beings, and then you go beyond that. And you make these characters actually plausible. Like I'm believing, my mind is saying, but then I'm also believing these characters, and they're human, they're non-human, but we can go along with it. Can we talk a little bit about that? Where did you get these amazing characters from?
Thank you so much, Tatari. Like you're so kind. You make me so happy. But yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I've always seen Mombasa as a place of magical possibility, but the magic is not fantasy, you know, because here we take superstition is not divided from kind of like how we conduct our daily life. I don't know how it is in other places, but I do know, like when I was in university, people would ask me where I'm from. I'm like, I'm from Mombasa. And it's like, oh, pale kwa majini, or like, you know, all these horror stories.
That place of demons, no. Yeah.
And that's better than Lamu, because Lamu is even worse. With the braying donkeys in the nighttime, the devil is walking the streets, etc. But that kind of always made me proud. I was just like, okay, Mombasa can be dangerous. That's nice. That's exciting to me, you know? Because as I said, it's kind of like those teeth that I was talking about. So Mombasa didn't feel as defanged as it had been portrayed. So example, like the goats. Yeah, sorry?
The goats, go on. That's actually what I was going to ask about.
Yeah, about the goats. Actually, that's something I kind of observed growing up in Mombasa. I would always see these groups of goats walking around, and I would ask people like, "Oh, where is the person who's managing these goats? Where are they?" you tell me this herd doesn't have like a shepherd or whatever it is, they're not scared of the goats being stolen? And they're like, no, they don't have a shepherd. They just kind of know their way home, and you just see them all over Mombasa, but especially here, like near the ocean also. And I was like, how sure are you the people won't steal the goats? And then I was told a lot of these stories. Like one time, a goat robber, and the goat robber had to come from Nairobi. He wasn't allowed to be a local, obviously, in the story, because the local would know. The robber came and yeah, the local would know. The robber saw the goats and he was like, hey, I can just pick up these goats. And he came with his truck and he opened up the truck and he herded the goats in. He drove off and then he heard a commotion in the back of the truck. And he stopped the car and he went and he opened the back. And inside the truck were all these naked people. And they were crouched over. And they said, wewe, turegeshe pale untutoa.
You take us back to where you took us from.
Take us back to where you took us from. And then the man did that. He took them back and he dropped them off there. And I thought, that's so civilized.
And you know what? It's also believable that nobody's going to tell you that didn't happen, because people are like, yeah, it would have happened.
It would have happened. So I was interested always in kind of like, okay, Mombasa is dangerous, but you also have this kind of air of civilization and refinement. The monsters aren't just monsters, they have manners. So that's why you have characters like Hamza, the cat, who's kind of not very nice, but instructive, I think. And you have characters like Almasi and yeah, I always wanted that kind of like charm to be there present in those characters, because it was charming to me that the ghosts would be like, take us back where you took us from. But I'm glad you found the characters believable. I think they were kind of really easy to write, and I didn't expect that, because I wasn't taking it too seriously. And I was kind of working with what the kind of impression I wanted the characters to give. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't really go a lot into detail about the physical appearances of characters, because those kind of weren't really always relevant to me. I know good writing is show, don't tell, right? You have to show that Zuberi is an attractive old man without saying that he's an attractive old man. But yeah, I felt like the tradition of storytelling here doesn't really care about showing when telling could be as delicious. So like just leaning into me not worrying about how to portray the characteristics so much as just talking about them, kind of I think led to more realistic characters rather than worrying too much. I don't know if that
and I think you do a good job in making us, because we get into the hearts and minds of not just your human characters, but as you said, the animal characters. And then also there is this sense always of mystery, something that, that thing that we can't, I don't see it, but I know it's there. I just know, and you feel it. And I think one of the things I like about your writing is that you can talk about the most mundane, a girl, as you did at the beginning, who's cleaning fish and things like that. People in the market, you can, describe that. And then you can also take us into the place of mystery, and we feel it, and we really, really feel it. And I know we chatted a bit about that. And what I'd like to do, I know we may have some questions that are coming up, but I wonder if you would give me the privilege of reading as part of the story, and then just taking us into that space that comes from. May I do that?
Doctor, that would be the greatest honor of my life. You're a wonderful performer. If you read a part of my book, I think I would have no words for how happy I would be. Thank you so much. I'm so honored.
Thank you.
Please do.
And what I want to do, the reason I picked this is we get to see a little bit of Aisha's interaction with Hamza the cat, who is the other big character, and whose presence infuses the whole novel. But this is on the sea. So Aisha, this girl who's living her life, something happens and she has to go on a quest. And all her life, I mean, she's from Mombasa, she's been in Mombasa, and after that period at the beginning where she's been on the sea with her father, she's been kept off the sea. So this is a story about she's compelled to go onto the sea and she's with the cat. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of that little journey. And this is after the cat has, told her, it's a mystical boat. I won't go into the details of that, but they are on the journey, and suddenly she realizes that something is wrong. It was an unnatural sea. In Mombasa, the sea had life in it, a movement. This was the sort of sea that blew no wind or sail, the kind of sea in which nothing moved. She rowed, and the oars made no noise, nor the water she put them through. The sweat was running cold down her back. She addressed the cat flatly and with forced civility. Is this the undersea? This is another sea, between your sea and it. It doesn't feel right. It shouldn't. She frowned, touched with uncharacteristic impatience, like a flame to paper. And then she heard it. Her body recognized it long before her mind did, or her heart discussed it. It hit her like the corner of a table slamming against her elbow. The electrified numbness, the unwelcome shock. Fear is prehistoric. Instinct, the immediate insight. Terror comes later. She heard the glide of fin through water that had refused sound all this time. Aisha's palms creaked around the oars, and she didn't dare look at her side for fear of what she would see and what curiosity might invite. Dread boiled up in the pit of her stomach. The cat watched her, something of alarm to his stillness. A yelp cut through in her throat when the feline leapt onto her knees. His nails dug into her skin, skittering up her lap, biting into her arms. The acrobat patched on her shoulders, and she shuddered when the end of his tail flickered against the root of her skull. Are you afraid? She whispered. There was something swimming alongside the boat. She screwed her eyes shut, jolting when the water lapped over her ankles, a wave in the wake of some creature's motion. No, the cat said, but I protect this neck, this throat. Aisha swallowed thickly, nodding as the tail brushed her left ear. He sounded calm, and she could take courage in that. The cat would not give her comfort in his silence, but gave her his small body. How could a cat protect her against the monsters of the sea and her own fear? What could a cat do? And yet, she took strength in the weight around her neck, in his closeness, and did not need to ask questions. This was trust. Whiskers tingling along his cheek, he whispered, "Row, child of Adam." Her eyes shivered open. The night did not move. Ahead. She did not look right. She did not look left. She picked up the bone oars, took a deep breath. She looked down, and a luminescent, ghostly, long shape shone in the dark, deep water beneath her, beneath the ribs. Aisha held her breath, looked ahead, and began to row. Water sloshed along the boat, the sound of bodies flinging themselves through, above and beneath the surface, following. And every time they came up, she heard the croon, "Baba wa papa, Baba wa papa." The splash and the sung warning of a child's voice. Aisha lunged forward and backward, pulling, pushing, so absolutely trained on the task as though it could keep her from peripheral danger. Every time she swung forward, the cat would go with her, head and body rocking as if he perched on a swing, his tail curled, anchoring around the curve of her left ear. When she swung back, his claws dug bracingly into her right shoulder. He protected her neck and her throat, and the children sang through the waves, and the great body moved beneath it. Baba wa papa, Baba papa, Baba papa, Baba papa, Baba papa. Father of the shark. Luminescent, transparent, the creatures flew, the flying fish, like flying fish, glowing at the corners of her vision. She heard a long echoing croon, the long whine. It was a sound she had never heard before, and she was struck by its nameless beauty. The spectre scattered, and the flowing shape beneath the boat plunged, escaping into the deep. Aisha, that was just so beautiful, but so scary.
Doctor, you're magnificent.
Oh,
That
thank
was
you.
wonderful. Oh, wow. I'm so sorry. I'm so, I don't have the words. I'm better writer than a speaker, but I never thought of my work being read and and performed in that way. I literally got chills. I was so engrossed. You are wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so honored, and I'm so happy.
You're so welcome. I wanted to read that passage because I think what you did so well with it is take us into the space of what it meant to be in this boat, to be focused on your quest. And then there's all this, and such crazy, amazing terror, so much things happen. I think you captured the monsters and that fear of the unknown, even before you see anything or you do anything. I think that was the part where I was with this girl. I was with this girl traveling. And one of the very interesting things that you do is you capture the nameless. And names are really important to you. So, as we're looking for questions as they come in, I just really wanted to ask you this question. Talk to me about naming and why it is important, why names carry such weight, and why not having names and not being spoken is also important to you.
I'm still recovering from that wonderful, wonderful performance.
I'm recovering from your book.
No, it's not the same. Oh God, thank you so much. But yeah, names are something that I'm so passionate about. I've never actually sat down to construct my thoughts about it, but I always knew, growing up, I told, "Usiharibu jina yako." Don't ruin your name and the name of your people, and it spoke also to the community kind of nature, the community focused nature that we have in a lot of Kenyan communities, not only Mombasa, but everywhere else. You can't go out and do whatever you want. You're not just you're somebody's daughter. You're a daughter of a tribe or a daughter of a clan, of a people. So a name is something someone can ruin. And then when it comes to the practice of cursing or putting curses on people, the Mchawi will ask you, what is your name? And what is your mother's name? Not from personal experience, but one I know of. And your name has power. Your name is as tied to you as your soul is, I think, as your shadow. And a name is a really, really powerful thing. In a lot of Muslim cultures, and special consideration given to Hadrami culture, and the Hadrami culture as it's developed here, very much touched and influenced by the Swahili culture here in Mombasa. When men talk, they don't mention the names of their sisters or their wives to other men, because it was considered it's none of their business. No, that's a very private thing, So name is very much tied to honor, to dignity. And it's very much tied to your sense of self. So Aisha, for example, her name is something she inherited from her grandmother. It's not, her grandmother was called Aisha. And the kind of name you have can kind of influence a kind of path or even your destiny. But we'll talk about destiny. It's interesting, and this is another topic. It's interesting, destiny. But example of being called Shida or Tabu, it's also part of a very rich tradition, obviously, and I don't want to discount that, but I don't see men being called Mercy. I don't see men, or at least maybe other people know, but I've never seen a man called Patience. I've never seen a man called Prudence. And I see these names a lot for girls in whatever language, whether it's Arabic or English or whatever kind of language. Maybe that's different, but in other cultures, maybe other cultures you've been exposed to, but that's what I noticed when I read about girls. You can't be called Jamila and be an ugly girl. That would be a very, very wretched kind of inheritance to have. And so a name can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Yeah. Particularly in my community, we have a tradition of being named after our grandmothers. Like I'm named Khadija after my grandmother, who passed away long, long, long before I was born. And my sister's named after my mother's mother. Sorry, did I say my father's grandmother? I meant, sorry. I was named after my father's mother, and my sister was named after my mother's mother. Yeah. And we move forward like that. We take our names forward, even with the men, the same, Ali, Abdullah, Muhammad. Depending on the family, you'll see these kinds of names specifically in those families kind of like repeat and repeat and repeat. And I always used to think when I was growing up, like, why would you name me Khadija? It doesn't mean anything. Like, oh yeah, she's the wife of the prophet. She's very honored, you know, wonderful woman. But it didn't feel like my name. Because I was like, you know, I wanted to, I was like, other girls are named, you know, beautiful things, like after flowers or after a certain, the blooms in heaven or rivers of honey or whatever it is. And I was like, what does Khadija even mean? And as I grew up, I realized I'm named after someone who is also possibly named after someone else, who is also named after someone else. And there's a way of making your name yours. And if you don't make your name yours, you're going to lose yourself. And it's important for your name to travel forward. Not my name specifically, but perhaps, I don't know how it is with you, but I find in my community, we don't know a lot of our history except like a few generations back. We don't know who came before us. We know very vague details, but a lot of it is not recorded. A lot of the culture is oral culture. You know, you don't have to be written down to be real. But it's good if your name carries forward, I think. And it's important to always remember, because if you forget, you're going to lose not only yourself, but also lose your people. So yeah, name is important, I think.
And in this story, I mean, and it's the same for us, I'm named for my grandmother, but what I find really interesting in this story is not only is Aisha named for another Aisha who was her grandmother, but there's, and this is anybody who hasn't read the book, and if you're reading it the second time, look out for the names. Every name in this book is not given carelessly. And I went into this amazing journey of just looking up every single name and where it goes and what it means. And what you just said now, that you need to sometimes the name is obvious, and sometimes it is about growing into that name. And even the name Aisha has got such rich meaning. But also what is interesting is when people give you a fond name, or when people don't give you their name, or when they don't give you their real name. And for me, the characters that are not named are as fascinating as the characters that are named. And then there are the characters where names are given. And in one case, and I'm not going to say which one, you know, a name is being given, and then, you know, there's a waiting to see, will this character agree? Will that name fit them? Will they take on their name, or would they reject the name? And so it's made me really think about names and really think about the question of destiny. And I know we're coming to the end of our conversation, but you alluded to that. And I'm also just really curious, destiny. Are we born into our destiny and we cannot do anything to change it? If you put a name on me, do I have to grow into that name? If it is my destiny to be a certain thing because this is what my culture says, where do we go with this at the end of this? What's your thoughts? Because I think characters are going around that question, and different characters are answering it in their own way.
I actually really, really love this idea of destiny, because it's also really informed by my Muslim faith. The idea of what is predetermined, what is going to be your fate. All we know in life is that one day we will die. That is, no one will escape death. There's a cure for everything except death. and every living thing will taste death. And we have that saying, the pen has been lifted and the ink is dry. So there's this idea of a decided destiny where God has decided this is what's going to happen for you, and that's what I've decided. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to speak flippantly, I'm trying to speak honestly. But we have in Islam this idea that God knows everything that's going to happen to you and has decided what's going to happen to you. But there's this story about a couple, a childless couple. They came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. I think it was him. If I'm wrong, correct me. But it's difficult to remember if that's the correct prophet. I think it was him. And the woman begged him and told him, "I'm childless. I want a child. Please, can you do something? You talk to God, intercede, like whatever it is, and make dua, and so I can have a child." And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "No, you're never going to have a child. That's what God has decided for you. And that's that." And then a while later, he was walking that same street or that same area. And he saw the family come and they had a child. They had a kid. The woman had become pregnant and she had a child and she was raising it. And what that story teaches us is that if you make dua or you pray, you can change anything. You know, the fate is something, destiny is not something fixed. You can move it with intention, with action, with prayers. So that's why I always found it a kind of disconnect when I read books, and there were always these grand prophecies. It's like, oh, you are destined to kill so and so, and I'm like, that wouldn't work on me because I'm Muslim. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that you can decide what's going to happen to me. It's always going to change. And what was so interesting about that Islamic take on destiny, what it tells you is never lose hope. And never say things are the way they are because that's just how they've been destined. So
and I can't do anything about it.
And I can't do anything about it. It's this fatalistic kind of idea that all our paths are fixed and we're all walking towards death with the same path, and that's that. And you don't get to have hopes or dreams. And it gives you this excuse to never force yourself to change or to adapt. And it's a hopeless way of living life. So we talked about names, and so you can't be called Jamila without being beautiful. But you are not what other people decide for you. You have to make yourself. So and I enjoy the idea about destiny because I don't know if it's a spoiler, but Hamza challenges Aisha with that idea of like destiny, of about accepting also the lessons that you learn throughout life. Are you doing the things that you're doing because it's gonna make somebody else happy, and now you're blaming that person for the way that you're behaving? You need to take control of your life. So there's that idea where Aisha herself feels like a character who has very little control, and then moving to a place of control. And that move towards a place of control doesn't have to be heretic or blasphemous or unacceptable, because I feel, especially with the communities that I'm in, with the Swahili, Arab, Hadrami, African, there's this idea that we can't question religion or spirituality, or that we are backward, or that spirituality itself and that religion itself is apparently uncivilized. And when the fact of the matter, like a religion like Islam and the traditions that are established in Swahili community, the storytelling culture speaks to a higher sense of being and understanding. It is you must always be challenging yourself to improve. And religion asks you to challenge truth in order to find the truth. So I wanted that to be there. I wanted to be there to be another expression of how to approach faith, not only as like a religious practice, but as faith in yourself and faith in the people around you. Faith in ideas like love, in ideas of God, in ideas of community. You always have to keep challenging yourself. So that's what I wanted to put forward. You know, people see Islam as this really backward like religion, obviously, because that's convenient to the current global situation. to like pretend like these kind of faiths are like backward or kind of, small brained or whatever it is, when the fact of the matter is one of the most liberal, like when it comes to like thinking and philosophizing and opening up the world. I wanted to bring that back. The idea of also the cat being a scholar's cat. There's this idea, the cat, is it a scholar's cat or is the cat a scholar?
Yeah.
And that kind of definition of the cat changing depending on who's thinking about him. Aisha thinks of the cat mostly as a scholar himself. And then some of the monsters refer to the cat, and some of the monsters refer to the cat as a scholar's cat. So kind of like, giving ownership of him to someone else. So yeah, I've given you a lot of words that don't know.
It makes a lot of sense. And actually, as we bring this to a close, I'll tell you where it takes me. One of the things I love is that the book does explore some pretty deep questions, doesn't tell you what to think, but then allows you to explore it as you've just teased out, the question of faith, the question of religion. And it's fascinating to see not just the humans, but all the living, every living being in the book is grappling with these questions. Another big question, and I want to ask you this as we come to an end, that you also look at, I think, is the space of the artist in a society. And so we see storytellers telling stories, they're poets, they're singers, there's all this, the henna artists, so the visual and performing arts within the community, and not just arts we know is about beauty, but going to beauty in the most holistic form and calling us to think, calling us to engage in a way that I just found profoundly beautiful, that it makes us think about what are the arts doing in society. So I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that. And as we close, and if Rick gives me a chance, I'll read a couple of comments that have come in because there are no questions. If you could tell us a little bit more about yourself as an artist, what else is out there? What should we look at? What should we look forward to?
Thank you so much. Don't look for me.
Okay, what work should we look? I know you've got some published projects.
If you look for me, you'll find me. I don't know. I'm working on some things, and I'll know when I know whether I'm willing to publish them as myself or as someone else, or when those works will be complete. But I felt like it was really important for my first work for me to stand in front of it. The next work, I would like a lot more freedom, because I love having these conversations with you, because you're my countryman. Also, you're very mashallah, very intellectual. You know the culture, and you know the importance of a lot of these kinds of inside jokes or inside kind of like tidbits of information. You get it. But I think there's also a danger of me, like maybe perhaps talking to someone maybe who's trying to engage with the work in a really, not malicious way, and really intent and intelligent way. But I feel sometimes I would have to explain too much of my identity, too much to someone perhaps who has never experienced or understood it, not because they do not want to, they do not care for it, but they've never had to. But I feel my work going forward, I don't always want to be talking about like, let's say right now, for example, let's put it out there example. Let's say I write a romance novel. Not going to. My parents can calm down. Let's say I write a romance novel, right? And I put it out there. So
much love in this book.
No, yeah, Hababa Sophia and Zubair, there's a love story. I was really happy about that one. But let's say I wrote a romance novel. No one will be able to read my romance novel without being like, oh, how does you being a Muslim woman kind of inform your take or your understanding of the story? And I don't want to always be doing that in projects that I'm just trying to have fun with. And I want to have the freedom of just writing a story, and like I'm not ashamed of all those aspects of my identity. I love them, but I don't always be explaining it to people perhaps who have not understood or have not experienced it. I know that is antithetical. I don't know if that's a word or whatever it is. English is a problem. That is what is the word, doctor? You didn't, you know it.
Well,
Counterproductive.
what I'm hearing you say, and I know you've published some, some poetry, some short stories. This is a novel, but I know, and I think this is about where we started. You're bringing us full circle. There is a way in which, because we are not accustomed, let me just be put, even as Kenyans, to having young Muslim women writing from Mombasa. And then, there's a complexity of, when I say from Mombasa and a Mombasari and all the things that people read, and there's so much expectation of, I'm sure people are like, why did you write in English, not in Kiswahili? Why don't you write this? Why don't you write that? And it's those boxes that you're saying, and which is, I think, what even the book does, is to say, you cannot put me in a box. That, I hear why you think I should fit in here, but I also need to have the space to be something else. And if the next thing I come up with is a novel that's on, is completely different from this, that's what's coming.
Yeah, because I'm interested in a lot of different formats of storytelling, not just book writing or novels. I'm interested in game writing, in interactive fiction, in poetry, in performance. I would never perform. That takes a different kind of guts. I'll leave that to you. Maybe you can teach me one day. But yes, all these forms of storytelling that I want to get involved in, but like on my own time, my own pace. And yeah, I don't want to be in that box because I'm very used to being put in that box. I'll fight you in that box if it comes down to it. Yeah, but I also I want to do other things and just do honest work, hopefully in future. But yeah, I always give that answer, and it's always a very annoying answer to give people because it sounds highly arrogant and irresponsible. But I felt I just need to say the truth. Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of Aisha in you. And so my final question to you is, if there was a gift, I know you talk in the book about the gift that you hope this book gives to Mombasa, but if there was a gift, is there, that you wanted this book to give to anyone else or any group of people, and we've talked about the politics of it, we've talked about the craft of it, we've talked about questions to do with naming, identity. I have so many other things I would like to talk to you about. Like, I want to eat, I want us to talk about all the food in the book and all that kind of thing. But if there was a gift that this book you hoped would give someone, even if it was just the joy of an amazing adventure story, it doesn't have to be deep, but it could be deep, what would that gift be?
That's a very deep question. So when I was writing it, I never really thought about other people reading it. But as I was developing it now, I had to think of my audience. And at the end of it, I think my answer would be this. What war are you fighting right now? Are you on the defense? Are you on the attack? Are you fighting enemies that you have made up? Who is the one stopping you from doing what you need to do? And in leaving, are you escaping, running away? I think I want people obviously to be entertained by the book and just have fun. And I wrote it for entertainment and I wanted them to be entertained. But I also need people, especially girls from Mombasa, that there's a certain way of being that they know. They know what I'm talking about. A kind of state of living that is very specific to Mombasa. When they go into the things that they're doing, when you choose your path in life, you need to realize if you're acting from a point of desperation or a point of power. And to always consider that before you take your actions, I think to take control of your life, I think is really important. And to realize the people you love and they're loving you, maybe that love isn't as full of the conditions that you imagine that it's full of. There's conditional love and unconditional love. And that love takes a lot of courage. And accepting love takes a lot of courage. And and there are different ways of being courageous. It doesn't always have to be very loud and very, very determined or, crazy in the ocean. It's in the smaller, quieter decisions that you make in your life. So yeah, I guess that's what I meant. I've never actually had to verbalize it like this before. It's your question that's brought it out of me. But I guess that is the gist of it. Have fun, enjoy the book like you're going to the movies, but also sit down and figure out what you want out of life, I guess. Yeah.
I'll tell you this. This is a book that I did exactly that. I loved it for the story, but it really spoke to me. And I want to just give you, it wasn't just to me. I've just seen just some of the comments that's come in. Julie Onyuka from Facebook says, this is a wonderful session. Congratulations, Khadija, on your first book. I can see Yaro Kayat has just said, in conversation with us, he's told you Khadija is an Arab name and it's got a meaning. A premature baby was born before full pregnancy period.
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
It is
okay,
incorrect.
and I'm happy. I'm going to ask you to say one last thing before we leave, but just a couple of comments. Samson KN says a very interesting conversation. Looking forward to reading the book. And Samson, I hope I did not give away the ending. I really made sure, tried not to. Abubakar Zain says, thank you for a wonderful conversation. He's just gotten a copy of the book from Prestige Book and is looking forward to read and reflect on the book with my wife and children. We are from Mombasa, so looking forward to enjoy a Mombasa story. Well done. Khadija, let me give the last word to you, and you can talk back, you can say whatever you like before we hand it over to Rick, who I'm sure has been patiently waiting. But get two Kenyan sisters talking, and Rick, you're lucky we're not pulling the all night through with this. Over to you.
Okay. Okay. In closing, I would like to say, Dr. Mwangola, thank you so much for giving me your energy, your attention, and just your passion and intelligence, and actually asking me questions that I've not actually encountered as often as some new questions, and that I kind of had to think up answers on the fly, and which exposed kind of like the deeper things that I didn't really think about before, I guess. Thank you so much for giving me your time and for that wonderful performance. I almost felt like I was tearing up a little, because it's one thing to write your work, but another thing to feel it in the air, I guess. And I didn't expect that. It was really magical. Thank you so much. I want to thank Elliott Bay Book Company for organizing this and facilitating this. Everyone at Graywolf was involved with the book, my editors, PR people, from Steve Woodward to Caroline Nitz, Katie Plinsky, and everyone. So many people. There's so many people that go into seeing a book out there. It was so stunning to realize that. A whole team of people. And I want to thank my family, my mother and my father, my brothers and my sisters, and my sister-in-laws, and everyone who supported me, not just in my family, but in Mombasa. I feel such a wild tenderness for my home that it's so difficult sometimes to kind of express. I had to write it out to kind of figure it out. I call this book a love letter, and it's in moving about in spilling all these words that kind of led me to that realization and to fully accepting that. I want to thank everyone who's read the book for buying the book. Thank you very much for your interest in the book and being so lovely, such lovely readers. And yeah, I think that's all I can say. If I've forgotten anyone, please forgive me. And the words can only say so much, but I try to use them as much as I can. Thank you so much.
Asante sana dada, shukran.
Asante.
Thank you.
I guess I have to say a few words, although Khadija just said words can only say so much. Both of you, this has been utterly, there aren't even words, because I mean, we're sort of in Seattle, we're waking up still, it's a morning, but we've sort of been awakened in ways that go beyond the usual sense of being awake or being asleep by what is in this book and the way you two have drawn it out in ways that I think we've had a few of these, but this is one of the ones where whatever each of you would normally carry around, you've brought it up with each other. I mean, raised the level of conversation and what you, Khadija just saying, she's verbalized things she's not verbalized before because of what Mshai was at, how we were being asked and posed. And the reading that especially Mshai did, it was amazing to see Khadija watch it, like, what marvelous story is this? And it was like, whoever wrote this, this is an amazing story. Well, listen to this. We were all feeling that, but it was fun to watch the person who actually wrote it beholding it the same way. And I think that's part of the mystery of creation, human creation, that sometimes you don't know what you've created in your own verbal way. I mean, that will keep changing, I think, as this book's life goes on. This book itself is a character now, along with the ocean and the people and the humans and the other than human characters. It has its place in the world, and so we are utterly grateful. And there's a question here from Abu Bakar, who is in Nairobi, about a launch in Nairobi. And I don't know that either of you know that yet, but I believe Prestige Bookshop will probably know. And the other thing that you got a hint of it today with what Mshai was doing, I believe she's part of a group that meets or will meet in a coffee house. She mentioned this before we were chatting about, and they like to take a book and do some readings and discussions and performances of it, and this might be a book that happens with. So I don't know if no.
I'm sure. I mean, we're going to talk to Jahazi Press and Prestige and say, please,
Yeah.
please, pretty, please, can we do this?
Yeah.
So Khadija,
anyway.
we can't wait to see you in Nairobi.
Yes. Okay. And I just, this book, I mean, it's been so. I think it's also been really wonderful for all of us. And I know we've had people here watching from Kenya, from different places, as well as Riyadh and others. But it's been so good to have this conversation in a more Kenyan context too, that as well as I think we readers over here, and it's good for us to know more of everything everywhere like this. So on the importance of the story and the beauty of the story that's there, and we feel it here too. I will say that near the end, the place I'm really careful about using these kind of words when I talk to people about the book, because we get to put it literally into people's hands, like, here, read this, and you talk about the story, and then what you don't say, but what, again, almost like what Khadija was, the show don't tell part, is that there is a sort of wisdom and knowingness, and it's a human, but also there's a humility to it, of what we're all here for. And I won't go on because Khadija said it so eloquently near the end, but throughout, both of you have done such a job of drawing out what's in this book, but also what we're all doing here, with work and life and everything. So thank you both.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been such a joy.
Yes.
And Khadija, we're going to keep talking.
Yes, you
do. I would love that.
Yes, so there's more conversations. We also, I think we said beforehand, we wish this were in Seattle, because this obviously would be lovely to have, but I think a few of us here would like to come to Mombasa or Nairobi and watch it there. That's as much as anything. You two will get to do that at some point, inshallah. So thank you both. And again, and everyone who's been with us. I think there's some family members here. I know Khadija was saying, about the romance novel, and don't worry, the parents won't have to worry, she's doing that. But
just an example.
Yes, they're at hand, as are the cats that are part of her life too. So thank you again, both of you. And I know it's into the evening there, night actually now. It's not even evening, it's night. So take care, both of you, and good travels and good work. Good luck with everything, both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Kwaheri sana.
Go ahead.